Well, welcome everybody to the Rich and Dwelyn show. I am the co-host or guest host today because both of our hosts were unable to make it, and we're also having trouble with our other link, which that reminds me, I'll have to put the new link into the show notes so that you can be able to watch it. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to have an interesting conversation today. Really excited about it. Really excited about the different things that we have. Our guest today, I've known him for a little bit. Our two normal hosts know him a lot better. So it may be a little interesting to get to know him a little bit more on my end. So we're really excited about that. But before we get into introducing our guest and things of that nature, what we're going to do is we're going to hear a word or see a video from our sponsor. All right, and now we're back. And so, like I said, we had something a little different, and we are having a lot of trouble with this, but it's okay. We'll get it taken care of. I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest in. To those that are on LinkedIn, I'm sorry, for some reason we're having trouble with our stream on that as well, but we'll figure that all out and see what's going on. But to no further ado, you know what? I'm going to bring in our guest. I'm going to bring in Mr. Mike Morales. Hey, Mike, how's it going, man?
Hey, Anthony. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, other than the technical issues that we're having right now, I'm doing pretty good, man.
Yeah, it's a Sunday.
It's a Sunday. Things happen. You know, this is the one thing about live streaming that I found out in the time that I've done it is there are issues from time to time that pop up. You just kind of roll with them, you know, figure out what's going on and go with everything that's happening and see what we can do. So it's good to have you on the Rich and Dwelyn show, even though I'm not rich and I'm not Dwelyn.
Yeah, it's an honor. When Rich Cabrera had asked me about this, I was actually really excited. I've been following your guys' show. Love what you guys are doing. Some of the dialogue that you've had with different guests, and even some who kind of stretched out, I think, beyond the planned time because it was such an intriguing conversation and hooked me in pretty good. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, not a problem, not a problem. And we are on, just found out we are on LinkedIn. We're under a different link, so we're on LinkedIn Live as well. So that's good. So what we're going to do today, I'd sent you all the show notes. I'd sent you the timelines, and now we're on our own schedule. It is what it is. So one of the first things I think we ask most guests on this show, and even on my show, on the live stream and on some of the other shows that we do, is really we like to ask our guests to give us about a 2 minutes background history on you. So in 2 minutes, can you tell me a little bit about Mike Morales and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, pretty easy there. Michael Morales, I'm a business owner. I train dialysis technicians and nurses. But that's not the big story, I guess. That's not me. The 2 minutes that on me is that I'm an only child. Both of my parents still living. I have two grandparents still alive with us, and 4 children, and a third grandchild on the way as we speak. And then I got my 3 babies, English bulldogs. So pretty simple. Family guy. Definitely spend a lot of time in the struggles of owning business and businesses, as well as on occasion taking employment when I find something that I'm really passionate about, that I can fill in a gap or bridge a gap. Lost you.
That's awesome, man. I put myself on mute. So that's awesome. You know, awesome to get to know you a little bit better. Awesome what you're doing. And you know, the thing is with, you know, you owning a business and all these other different things, the industry that you're in is an industry that's really close to my heart, obviously, for obvious reasons. To those of you who don't know, I used to be on dialysis. I used to be a dialysis patient. But Mike, you're in the dialysis industry. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was that's, I guess, that's the story as far as like why I do the things I do on a daily. Is I grew up with a dialysis patient. My uncle did dialysis, home dialysis in his den. And from the time I was born until my mid 30s, it's just what me and my family knew as a necessity. We all got involved. There was a point when I was 15 years old, and he was a self cannulator. So he put the needles in his arms himself, set up his machine himself at home. And after years of being kind of taxed from different complications, calcifications in his hand, making it really hard to move his fingers and have that mobility, that fine mobility, fine motor skills to put needles. He's in the den and he's like, son of a, and he starts cursing and he goes, come here. And he kind of gives me the prescription, not like, just do it the way you think, but this is exactly how you're going to do it. Put the needle in my arm. And at a certain point, I'm going to take over and put it the rest of the way. That's what he told me. You just start it in, I'll put it the rest of the way in, then this is how you tape it. And, he expected and I obliged, right?
Right.
It was like I saw him doing it on himself. I saw him starting to get less capable. I knew he needed it. I loved him. And there was no choice. It wasn't a thing of like, well, that's too hard, or, well, doesn't it take a nurse or a doctor to do that? I was 15. I was like, okay, let's do it. And then it became, okay, here's how you set up my machine and check water and, coordinate supplies and things like this. And it just became a part of life, as it was always a part of life, but it became more of an active engagement in his care. And naturally, moving on through like high school, graduating, getting opportunities to work in dialysis clinics and saying, no way, that's not what I want to do. I went into construction and kind of toggled between construction and dialysis for quite a while, actually, for years. And the reason why I did that is in construction, it would start raining and I wouldn't have any work. So I was like, what else do I know how to do? And I'd go work in dialysis clinics. Eventually I figured out, hey, it doesn't stop my work in a dialysis clinic when it rains. And I'll be honest with all of you that initially it was kind of, a job. But it grew into this connectivity between my understanding of what my uncle went through and helping him at home and being able to somewhat empathize with that, not from the other end of the needle, but from the, the practitioner, the caregiver side of it. I was comfortable with that. I understood what he went through and felt like it could help others. And I liked working in urban areas as well. So I stayed in kind of urban dialysis facilities and found connectivity there as well, because I didn't grow up with, the white collar crowd per se. I could empathize with a lot of the folks in the inner cities and connect with them.
Right. So, I mean, that's phenomenal. And through this working in the dialysis industry, where you started out and now where you're at, how has that, how have you seen that grow yourself? Starting from here now to where you're at. We're going to get to where you're at for our audience out there. We're going to get to where you're at here shortly. But from starting to where you're at now, how did that help you grow?
Well, I would say that, there's kind of what I've learned in my 23 years of professional dialysis services is that there's kind of a rite of passage, if you will, on the professional side, definitely, but I can see it on the warrior side as well, as far as fighting, the disease itself or preventing it in the first place. But there's a rite of passage where, we kind of live today, learn today, learn from yesterday, and then just start to develop our intersubjectivity. So I can just say this much, that the journey for me has been in learning something every day from somebody different and actively seeking out people who have knowledge sets or perceptions that are different than mine, to just get enough to have the right point of view, a holistic point of view on the entire picture. So understanding things like reimbursement, that wasn't so important to me when I first started out. I just wanted to take care of people like I took care of my uncle, and give the best care that I could. Not understanding reimbursement led me a little bit naive to optimization, and having a certain number of people to take care of, and really a finite set of resources to do that, and how to allocate my time, the resources that I'm given, to give the best care or equitable care to each of those stakeholders. So again, I think that rite of passage is kind of making mistakes in some cases, or being naive in some cases, being brought aware, and then or corrected, or in some cases reprimanded, to where, as we mature, we have a broader view, we have a broader impact on the entire, I'll call it an ecosystem, if you will, but the entire, whether it be the care provider side, the patient side, the reimbursement side, my vote, etc.
And that's very important, especially when you're in the dialysis industry. You think of somebody, I think the things that I've seen, and things that, a lot of times when you start into a job, and a lot of times I wonder if some people do. It's not saying they don't, just, they need a job and not really thinking about making this a career. And I think it can be a wonderful career for somebody that really not only loves to care for people, but loves to make a major positive impact in the world. And with what you've done, so you went from, working, starting out, and now you own a school, correct? You want to tell us a little bit about the school?
Yeah, so I started a school in the Southern California area in 2009. That was after 9 years of, we'll say, working in the trenches, in the clinics, but also working for other schools. So pretty early on, when I started in dialysis, in the clinics, I was recognized as far as just adherence to policy and procedure, general knowledge base, and work ethic, like, attendance, timeliness, observing break schedules, things like this. So I was put as a preceptor, and ended up working with vocational schools like the one I own now, but as an employee for them. And there was a point, and I can see some of the people who are in the comment section anyways, that we may have heard this a time or two in our career as dialysis technicians, which that's my core discipline, is that, like, you're just a tech. And there was a point where I was told that you can work for me, for my school, and teach all the classes and run the whole thing, but you can't open another branch, or you can't open your own, because you're just a tech. And that was really what it took to trigger kind of 2.0 for me, from mastering a trade onto moving into an entrepreneurship, and sharing what I know. Sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. I mean, and that's something that I think many of us that are in the dialysis field, or especially the technicians, where they say you're just a tech.
Yeah.
And I'm going to flip this around, because I was on both sides. I've been on both sides of the chair, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I've been not only do I work in dialysis as a technician, biomedical to be precise, but also as a patient. And I look at it from the patient point of view, or at least my point of view at the time, was that I thought everybody in that whole room was nurses. I did not realize that there was something called CCHT, or in the biomed world, for CCHT, for those of you out there, I think that's Certified Clinical Hemodialysis Technician. And then there's the CBNTs, or Clinical Biomedical Nephrologist Technicians. And then you got, the CDWS, Certified Dialysis Water Specialist as well. And I think there's other few. And I didn't realize it's more than, as a patient, you don't really, It doesn't bother you if they're a tech or a nurse. At least for me, it didn't. They're saving my life. So what in the world would I say they're just a tech?
Right.
In reality, they just saved my life.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's
and I
great.
think that's a very important thing. And then, I think, with that, somebody saying that, did that light a fire in you when somebody said you're just a tech, to say, hey, look, you know, not only am I just a tech, but I can actually start my own school and
Right.
do far greater things than what anybody else can think about.
Absolutely, Anthony. I got to say, you just lit a fire in me as well, though, by giving that patient perspective. The other side of it, that you're just saving my life. I hear techs say that about themselves. I'm just a tech. It's people don't have to point it out to us. Sometimes we say it to ourselves. And what you just said, I think more people need to hear. More technicians specifically need to hear that from where you were sitting, that no, there's no difference between the technician, the nephrologist, the nurse. They're all there to help you live a better life, to help you live. So I really appreciate that perspective. But 100% being told I can't do something or being kind of belittled, that's the perfect way to get me. You want to light a fire in me. You want to give me motivation, then tell me I can't do something. And it came from somebody that was really close to me. So it was even more impactful because, again, I was kind of doing the entire A to Z for that person in their school. And when it came time, I said, hey, I just graduated, I just got a bachelor's degree, right, in business. I said, let's start another branch. I'll run it. Stupid you're just a tech, right? And yeah, it really upset me. It put me to the whiteboard, the drawing board for a couple years. And I started to go through, all the regulation that I needed to do to start a school, figure out how I could fund it, find people that would support me as far as educators, advocates, champions on the side of the patients, that can speak on that front, because we want all students to hear all angles, not just the clinical angle, but what it's like to go through, what it's like to have to navigate, activating Medicare insurance or navigating your own insurances, all of these sort of things. So I gathered that team, and in 2009, I remember this vividly because I mentioned construction going back and forth. I was on one of those toggles. I was working in oil refineries for a minute, and I had been working with the California Department of Public Health to get approval to offer the program for a while, and they called me on a lunch break, and I quit. They told me, hey, you're approved now. You can offer the hemodialysis training program. And I was on lunch, and I told the superintendent, I say, my last day, I'm done. Remember all those times on lunch when I was talking in the van? You guys told me I'm full of shit. Like I did it, right? And they all celebrated with me, and they were happy for me. But yeah, that was last day. I never looked back.
That's awesome. And I love that. And you know what we're going to do real quick is we're going to acknowledge the comments real quick.
Sure.
Those that are tuning in, I see we got D tuning in.
Hey, Dylan.
What's up, man? I know you got a little busy today, and that's cool. That's awesome, man. You're out there saving lives. We love what you do, man. We got the Ursuline Kennebrew, who owns the Curvy Girl Clubhouse. Thanks for tuning in, Ursuline. And we've got Emily here. She's a great supporter of our show as well. We have
Hi, Emily. Ursuline.
Ursuline saying she's saying congratulations and much more success to you, Michael. So
thank you. Appreciate that.
I think that's something going back to all the different things what drove you, and I think that's kind of probably what gives you that drive. I know for me, this is my perspective, and I want to see if it's something similar. When somebody tells me that I can't do something, I want to turn around and go out and prove them wrong.
Yeah.
And make it, somebody says, well, you can't, because I've been told that multiple times in my life. I think a lot of us have. But when I'm told that I can't do something, my mindset is, don't tell me what I can do, tell me what I can't do. because I'm gonna turn around and prove you wrong. And sometimes that's kind of like that. It's more than the fire. It's like the fuel on the fire.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think, as far as the fire, like I didn't need to be challenged to know that I could do it because I was doing it for somebody already. So like proof of concept was there. I had worked with hundreds of students in other schools, helped them to get their certifications, graduate, and the thing I love about doing that, Anthony, about teaching dialysis technicians and nurses is that, like you said, a lot of people come in just they're looking for jobs, and similar to kind of how it drew me in at first. But what we learn is that this is not a job. This is a profession to care for people, and that care part is an absolute. If it's not there, nobody's going to be happy. Outcomes aren't going to be there. So the caring aspect has to come there, and I love that with the team that I work with on the education side that we can not only fill the requirements of certification for dialysis techs and nurse, but we can instill on them how to care, and how holistic that is. It's not just a safe and effective treatment, but it's like a therapeutic presence. When I'm with a person for 4 hours and they're on a dialysis machine, yes, I have to make sure that they're safe and that the treatment is as prescribed, hopefully effective as prescribed. But I got them for 4 hours, and then they're going to go home in between treatment and have to remember all kinds of things. So I feel like those 4 hours, like the bigger purpose for dialysis technicians and nurses is to teach patients during that time, empower patients, suggest patients, support patients towards rehabilitation, towards being able to navigate, let's say 168 hours minus 12 hours, so 156 hours of not being in the dialysis center. Like, what do I do then? And working on that suggestion towards subconscious so that people can better self-manage.
Right. And it's true. It's and I'll tell you, it is a long time in the chair. And it was the techs, it was the nurses, it was the whole care team. And to anybody that's out there in the field, it's more than, yes, we need to education and reevaluate, come back in and answer questions for people and help them out. But sometimes I don't know, sometimes we get really busy. We get busy in what we're doing, right? We're running here and there. Sometimes just a word, just a, hey, how's your day going today, can change that patient's perspective, or that individual's perspective, I'd rather say individual perspective, to more of a positive note. Say, hey, they took time. Because I remember one individual, and I've talked about them before. Sadly, they passed on. They were a biomedical equipment technician, and they would take time to at least come over and say hello. And it made such a profound impact on me. And even when I finally, when the opportunity came after, to get to go where I was called, because I feel like this was a calling. It's a little different, I think, for me than some people, and that's okay. That always stuck in the back of my head. So even if you just say hello, you don't know what kind of positive impact that's going to have on people.
Agreed. One of our friends, Sam, kind of always talks about just the nature of the encounter and how even a smile, a joke, but like you said, even acknowledgement, right? Even just the opportunity to listen to somebody in some cases on what struggle they're going through, related to dialysis or not related to, can make that 4 hours that they have to do, right? Or 3 to 5 hours, whatever it is that they have to do, can make it more tolerable, can make it more of a positive in the subconscious, to where when they go in there, the things that the doctors and the nurses and dietitians and social workers are saying as prescription are associated with positive rather than negative. Because when we have that negative, and I really believe that's a responsibility of the frontline techs and nurses, to create that positive to where subconscious can accept things and not reject things. Because if we set the pace front line with a negative, what goes into subconscious is going to be resistance. It's going to be a negative in the mind of the patient, to where hearing you talk is like the Charlie Brown teacher, right? Or we've probably all seen this, where a dietitian will come out to discuss the parameters of the last lab draws, and you'll see the patients, like the dietitians over here, and they're about to come to me, and I'll just go like pretend like I'm asleep, right? Until the dietitian drops the paper, and then they go like, "Hey, Morales, come here. What does this mean?" They ask the technician, and it's again, I think that positive encounter is super, super important for acceptance.
It definitely is. It definitely is. And I think, doing what you're doing, be able for you to be able to take future technicians or technicians to your school to teach them, to give them a better opportunity to have more knowledge. I think you've
Mhm.
got a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. What you're doing is wonderful for those out there, and you really are impacting those that are in dialysis, even though you're not their chair side, because you're teaching the future generation coming up behind us.
Right. Yeah, one thing that we're really focused on as well, and that kind of thinking about some of the things you had asked prior to the show, like what can we do to improve some of the things in education and improve the care on the side of the nurses, the techs, or the staff overall. I think there's a couple of things. One is that we can just talk about it more, and like that statement that you said earlier, as far as tech, nurse, whoever it is, they're just helping me live. They're not just a tech, they're just helping me live. I think that's really important to get out what these disciplines are and how they actually influence and help society or help communities. Second is that I feel like we need a lot more community involvement in the workforce, because there are such high numbers of ethnicities that like African American and Hispanic that have type 2 diabetes and hypertension. It's disproportionate in actuality nationally, to where we can kind of look in certain areas of the country and see that there's pockets, more patients in those areas, right? And what seems to be a disparity or a gap is that we don't see the people in the communities often, or in some cases, caring for the peoples in the communities. So in other words, the access to education, the access to profession, there's a bit of a gap as far as the cultural identifications of staff versus patients, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it does. It does. I mean, it definitely does with that. And I think getting into communities is very important. And there's different ways that each of us are in our own respective ways are trying, with you, with the school and the different things, projects that you've got going on. I know with us, we're more into the publishing. So we do like the graphic novels and actually get into, we do these streams like this.
Yep.
We've got them on all four platforms right now, with YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, a gaming platform. Would you believe that? A dialysis show on a gaming platform, and it's not just gaming. There's a lot of other things, but that's getting into a different part of the community,
Absolutely.
of people that's getting into the gaming world. And then, of course, here on LinkedIn, and that's you get people from all over. I mean, all the connections have an opportunity to see it at one time or another. So I think that's fantastic. We have
I love that, Anthony. Don't mean to cut you off, but I see a comment as well from Dwelyn that kind of ties in to the Twitch thing. Is change in the renal world. Well, we kind of think about kidney failure as an old people's thing, right? Like I mean, I'll just tell you, I go around and I ask people, especially young people, what do you know about kidney disease, right? Don't think about it, right? They don't know much about it. So I love that you guys are tapping in to like the gaming world. There's a lot of efforts that are moving towards like metaverse applications of healthcare as a whole, but also kidney awareness, towards virtual realities and just different environments where people may feel more comfortable and be more inept to find this information, like in a gaming world, for example, like a metaverse, where I just was watching some. I went to a tech summit a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about how because of the high incidence of mental illness in the United States, a lot of people actually feel more comfortable in availing services through like a metaverse or an avatar type of environment. And I had never thought about that, to where, you know, I don't feel comfortable showing you my face. I don't feel comfortable you knowing it's me, but I want to ask questions and I want to avail information. So I think we're in a very interesting time as far as that availability and that change, not just in the renal world, Dwelyn, but also healthcare as a whole, in how information is acquired, disseminated, but then we also have to think about what are our controls on that acquisition, uh, dissemination. So we don't just want any information going out there that could perhaps be dangerous to people, right? I mean, there's like, we know about like holistic medicines and things like this, that, not to say they're wrong, but they definitely should be vetted out with like your nephrologist or your primary before you do something that, grandma told you to do is the way we do it, right? Because my grandma's got a million of those.
Yeah, same here, right? I mean, there could be. I mean, for my grandma was always chicken noodle, always fixes almost everything. It makes you feel better. I'm not sure if it fixes everything,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you're right. You're right, and that's one thing, is making sure that everybody gets the right information from the right place.
right.
Don't just, because I know a lot of people, when you first diagnosed, somebody, when I was first diagnosed, you're kind of in this numb state of mind where you're like, what do I do? You get all this information and here you go, off you go to dialysis a few days later. Now you need, it's not that it's expected of you to know everything, but you feel like you
Oh,
need to
an
know it
expert.
all. Right.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
it's an expectation that you place on yourself.
yeah.
So what happens is that it really can, you go off, and what do the first people do when they want to learn something? What do they go to?
Yeah, YouTube or Wikipedia or
Yeah,
Google. Yeah,
their phone,
yeah,
wherever it's
yeah.
at. Their phone. Maybe I should have did that logo. But yeah, I mean, they go to their phone and they start researching. And the thing is, everybody's got an opinion. It doesn't mean they're all right.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
So make sure it's from trusted sources first. The medical care team, people in the professional realm like Mike here, that can actually help, guide you to either the right information, or also guide you to people that can give you the right information so you can make good decisions based on your health care, from the sources. I always tell people, go to your medical team.
You
I'm
know,
not the medical team.
it's interesting that you say that, the you felt like you needed to know it all. Like you were diagnosed. A few days later, you're at dialysis. So I'd love to kind of tap into that, interview you for a second, Anthony. What can we do to make sure that people who end up at dialysis, which, hopefully more education would prevent, but when they end up at dialysis, they've got the information that they need? Because I agree with you. It's like, how do you crash into dialysis and then absorb all that?
I'll put it this way: how I see that could be benefit everybody is kind of going to, this is flipping it. I used to be in sales. I was in sales. I've been in sales since 2008, 2009.
Hmm.
And one of the key components that I found out in sales is, if you've got a lot of programs, because I was in a retail environment for a portion of it, and they had, credit cards, this plan, this plan, this plan, this plan. And when the customer would come through the line, they said, give it all.
Hmm.
And so most people would take the plate of everything and say, here you go. Um, we want to give you this. We want to give you the credit card. If you sign up with membership, you get 10% off. You get all this. You get this. It'll save your, like a virtual receipt, this and this and this. By the time the customer walks out, they didn't buy anything.
Yeah.
So, and I remember when I was diagnosed, the first thing that was told to me is, you've got kidney disease. Your GFR is 3 to 5, 3 to 6. Your creatinine levels bad. This is bad. So you're gonna have to go on dialysis. But there's hemodialysis, so we need to look at hemo. Basically, you get a catheter placed in your chest, and here you get hooked up. The machine runs through. It cleans your blood. You do this for a few hours. You start out with 2 hours. Eventually, you end up to 4 hours. This is all in one session. Okay.
Hmm.
And then right when I was in the ER room, okay. And, we could also look at taking you to home dialysis, where you can do it at home. And then,
Wow.
you're a good candidate for transplant. It was this mess
Mhm.
kind of handed to me as like, here you go. And then I was on my own. So I think taking those little pieces, is somebody gets in dialysis unexpectedly. A lot of people like to use the word crash. I'm not big on the term, but we'll use it.
Mhm.
With that, I think if you offered little bits and said, okay, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to come back later on, talk to you a little bit more about it. Slowly,
Mhm.
slowly. If you eat too much too fast, what happens? Indigestion, sick,
Yeah.
everything. So if you feed it slower, because you got to remember too, as a individual that has kidney disease, especially if its GFR is really low and the creatinines were, you know, sky high, it affects your mind and you got this mental fog.
Cloudy. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you give that all to somebody, a lot of times that's where people will just throw it up in there and say, I'm done. It's too much. It's too much to deal with right now, because you got to also look at individuals actually have other lives other than dialysis.
Mhm. Yeah.
They may have maybe have may be married. They may have kids. How am I going to, is my job going to keep me? Is this going to happen? So it's all these things going on. And then you're throwing all this, and it doesn't take long before this pretty much says I'm out,
Yeah.
and you get less education. And sorry to get on a little go a little longer, but that's
I'm,
what I see.
I'm super interested in that. I ask myself every day, and it's, from several roles that I serve in the ESRD community, but how does chronic kidney disease become a normal dialogue, that everybody knows about, that, everybody knows that if you have kidney failure, that you may end up on dialysis, and there's a few certain components that you're going to have to think about if you get there. Because again, like you get there, you say you got there and it was all thrown on you. So how can we disseminate these things without being, doomsdayers, to everybody? And I think, the kids with the Twitch and, wellness programs and social media and all these sort of things. I feel like we haven't got it as an industry how to conquer that yet, to make it a normal conversation.
And you're right. I do believe that too. And one way that I've been working on that for probably since I was 2014 is when I actually started teaching a kidney care class. One
Mhm.
way that I started doing it, my first speech that I did is I got invited to go share my story. Okay. And so I got up, went to speak. I stood up, my mind set back down and said, you ain't supposed to be doing this. So, one of the things I remember on dialysis is I wanted to know why. What did other people do?
Mhm.
But more than that, what lessons did they learn? And so that ended up going back to where I am as a speaker, because I do public speaking,
Mhm.
is taking my dialysis experience, my transplant experience, and those lessons that I've learned along the way, and incorporating them in to a speech. I mean, I'm getting ready to do a virtual, getting ready to speak a virtual group in Scotland
Oh, wow.
next month. And these are CEOs, they are successful entrepreneurs, small business owners. They are some of the people I've met at that group. I met Joe Fawson, founder of Reebok. He's in that group. And I'm getting ready to speak to them. And what we're going to be speaking on is we're going to talk about success, leadership. We're going to talk about some of these other things, but integrated in that story is lessons that I learned while I was on dialysis. How did I handle certain things? So by taking dialysis and really making it, hey, this is just another part of life for me. It's nothing different than anybody else is going through, other than they're going through something a little different, you
Mhm.
know, more normalizing it that, hey, this guy's out here, he's speaking on success, but how did he learn it? He learned it through dialysis, being a
Right.
patient. So
Yeah.
that's for me, that's how I've been doing it is, and I've had the opportunity to speak at other conferences, medical conferences, success conferences, and things like that. And then people say, and even on these LinkedIn live streams, and the majority of the message I hear is, I know somebody on dialysis. I
Right.
just never knew to ask. So
And
it's
probably
normalizing that
much about
conversation.
it. Yeah, no, I can really appreciate, and I think, I was, as you were speaking, I was thinking the same thing as several of the shows that you guys have put on with different champions, different warriors. I think, for those that can hear it, and it needs to be broadcasted more. So you guys have all my support. The more people that hear it, then again, it is a story heard, a story understood, hopefully, and exposure to what the unknown is. I think I've seen Dwelyn throw up there, the unknown territories, right? Kidney failure really is an unknown territory. So I was in the gym 2 days ago, and I have some good friends there that, we talk about just kind of the incidents among African Americans and Hispanic Latinos. But one of the guys there, he's an NFL player. So I figured, I'm going to start to drop seeds in his ear and ask him, what does he know about kidney failure? It's like, I don't know anything about it. I've never thought about it. And I said, what do you know about hypertension? He was like, oh man, that's a big issue in the African American community. I know about that. Do you know that it's one of the top causes of chronic kidney disease and kidney failure? And he didn't know that. So we got into this conversation about what kidney failure is, what the therapeutics look like, how many people, and he was just blown away. So I'm trying to have those conversations as well, Anthony, through what we do on the education with our students, and they broadcast as well, right? One of the things that we encourage every student to do is to objectively practice what they learn, or practice teaching what they learn, because ultimately what we learn is for the patients, right? So that they can be empowered themselves. So they share with the patients can go and do for themselves. So we teach them, practice with your family, practice with your dog, get used to hearing the sound of your voice and talking about kidney failure and how to take care of yourself, how to prevent it, how to take care of yourself if you have it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I think that's very important to share that and to practice in that area. Especially as people that are wanting to get in and as a technician. And this is an interesting thing about this. I'm going to pop back a little bit. It's and connect with this where we were talking about you're just a tech. As just a technician, what can you do? Look at a lot of people that are successful. A lot of them didn't have college degrees.
Right.
They were supposedly just a tech.
Mm-hmm.
But I think any of us, if we learn those lessons, learn from schools like you, and then take it in, I'll say it this way, take it to the road,
Mm-hmm.
integrate your speech. If you need help, there's people out there that can help. I think there's like Toastmasters and stuff that could help you.
Yep.
If you want to speak, you could blog about it. KT, we are a blog. You can write about it.
Yeah.
You say, well, I'm not a writer. Well, if you're writing medical content, you kind of are a writer. you know
Mm-hmm.
so you take it, and now you're not just the tag. You're sharing information, you're raising awareness, you start teaching things that you learn from the school. You say, well, this happened and I learned this, and this is applicable to life by this. I failed at this test, and because I failed at this test, I got back and went back and studied more, and then I became successful at that test, whatever it is. I'm just using an example. And
Yep.
next thing you know, you've got this little story that is making a huge impact in your community. You could go to high school and talk about, how did you find your passion? How did you find the calling?
Yep.
You could go to different conferences and say the same thing. Say, well, I might be the one that my mind, I stand up, my mom might sit back down, as Jim Rohn said one time. But
You, you
there's
know,
so many different things. TikTok, all these other different platforms, they're there if they're used correctly and utilized correctly. You're way more than like I said, we're way more than a tech.
I want to speak to that a little bit more, since we got back to it. Just perception as being just a tech really is a great thing, because what techs do is a lot of great stuff for a lot of people, right? The role we have in the people that we serve life can be really, really impactful, influential. But I was having this conversation with my daughter. She's 24. She went through our school a few years back, then went through LVN school. She's in LVN now, and she's like wanting to take next steps, right? And she says, what can I do? I'll just go back to school and be an RN. That's what she told me. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I want to like run businesses. And I said, so, are you sure RN's the way that you want to go? Right. And not to discourage her from being an RN, because I have so much respect and admiration for RNs, but I was like, what are you going to do with that? When you become an RN, where are you going to go to run a business? And I started to show her that, I thought the same way before. It's like, I got to go be an RN because I'm just a tech, right? That's what they told me. And, I chose to go the business route with my first degree. And then my master's degree is in health administration and education. And it moved right into the niche that I'm in today. But something that came out of left field, and I think it's an interesting story, is that because of my background in dialysis and then turning that into education, vocational education, and training people with success for so many years, COVID hit us, and there were these things called COVID super centers. Anybody know those? Like the drive-throughs that you go to get tested and stuff like this. And I was recruited from one of those companies because of my talents in education and dialysis to run as the vice president of operations and education, run a COVID operation with over 600 staff there. So like the level up on that for a lot of people was like, wow, from dialysis and education or tech and education into a VP role, there was no change in my skill set. It was the same skill set of, basic understanding of the COVID testing, but efficiencies, operations, and talking to people who want to advance their career. I don't always say that you have to go up to a different discipline, because being a master technician, being a master educator, being a master CNA, being a master biomed, being a master patient advocate champion, those are skill sets that people need and will look to you for consultation or a subject matter expert or a position in their organization that's right to that niche, like in the case of the education with the COVID operations. So I want to say that you can take the skill set that you have today, that you start with, even you can master it, and then you can look at what can you do to improve on it through either duplication or a improvement in efficiency, or of course we all are big on outcomes, right? So if we can find ways to improve outcomes, then of course we're gold, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think it is true. You can take your skill set and apply it to further yourself and others around you.
Mhm.
And I think that's just absolutely fantastic. I think there's a lot of content right here that people can talk about. And I'm sure more people once the show's over. And the thing is, you never know who this is going to touch because it's out there.
Yeah.
It's all over our channels. People go back and watch hashtag replay,
Mhm.
and you never know how it's going to affect. Maybe somebody out, and I'm going to talk to our audience right now. Maybe one of you out there have been interested in being a dialysis technician, and you've heard some of these things. Look, this is a great career. This is a great path. If this is something that you would like to do, I think you've heard some things that Mike and I've been talking about. I think it's phenomenal. But I think it's something that it can really fulfill someone.
Anthony, there's I don't know if you've talked about it on your guys' shows before, but there's a pretty crippling crisis as far as staffing goes in the dialysis industry, and it's nationwide. Just about every state has an issue, whether it's be the dialysis technicians, the dialysis nurses, the dialysis educators, the biomeds. We were just talking before the show. Everybody's stretched pretty thin, and I was talking earlier about kind of connecting to communities. We're actually working on some things right now to avail federal funding for these students, so that those that are unemployed, underemployed, or in qualifying circumstances, that they would be able to apply to their state to pay for the program so that they could become dialysis technicians. So we feel like that's a real econ project, because up until now, the way that organizations get their staff are to go out recruiting, right? And when they go recruiting, they're typically looking for qualified people. And when they're looking for qualified people, they either train them themselves. So somebody met the mark just in the onboarding, like the application process, or they look at somebody who's trained already. As I mentioned earlier, in a lot of the African American and Hispanic Latino communities, there's a disproportionate ability or lack of ability to pay for this type of schooling. So this state funding, we're hoping, will actually, on a local level, through a community that we're able to get funding for a student to go through training, will actually start to change these communities in several ways, not just through employment and people in the community caring for others in the community, but through the actual knowledge base in the community, which is part of the issue. Because when we look at type 2 diabetes and hypertension, it's all about education in the communities. National diabetes prevention programs, education among those particular ethnic groups is really, really important and a bit underrepresented.
It's true. It's true. And I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be phenomenal. That can be a game changer.
Yeah.
Like I said, but I think it's phenomenal. And, to bounce off of that, we do have coming up very soon. People see the announcement. I think you're taking part in it a little bit with the Kidney Trails Business Summit. I think you're going to be taking part of that. And part of that's going to be a little bit about expanding someone's career. So I think it's going to be fabulous on that, and into the dialysis world as a biomed, as a technician.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's phenomenal. So tell you what, we are getting close to our end time. We started a little bit late, guys, so we still got a little time left if you're good with that, Mike.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, cool. So we got 2 more questions. We're going to go with this one. We're going to bring this one from Dwelyn in. And he's wanting to know what's in store for DES. And for those of you that don't know, that's Mike, that's your school, right? Dialysis Education Services?
Correct. Yeah. We're located in Bellflower. So next 5 to 10 years, actually, COVID really enlightened us in a way that we figured out virtual education, not just through meetings like this, where we can be face-to-face with the students in a Brady Bunch type of fashion, like Zoom or Google Meet, but also through the use of learning management systems and virtual classrooms where asynchronous work can be done that is still in dialogue with class. So similar to like your university courses where you'll have discussions and team type of projects in a classroom that you're not necessarily meeting online, but you're interacting through projects or discussion forums. Quizzes online, and then introduction, which we're the first private school to do this, but introduction of virtual reality with a partnering company called Lifelike, which I think you guys are familiar with, bringing in like different simulations and the ability for technicians to kind of look into a dialysis clinic without entering a dialysis clinic. So those are some of the current events, but with that virtual nature, we were able to launch nationally and get approvals through the Board of Nephrology, as well as agreements with various dialysis organizations so that we can train people virtually in any state and then place them in the communities that they live in for their clinical rotation. So back to that, people in the community taking care of people in their communities. As far as other plans developing, we are looking at adding programs to our actual approvals. So perhaps some other allied health specialties with a real integration of the knowledge that is required in those allied specialties surrounding renal care. So as you guys know, I see Rich made a comment that about skilled nursing facilities. Well, I'm also a licensed nursing home administrator, and I took over a nursing home a few years back. None of the staff knew anything about dialysis patients, and they were filling out documentation that they were checking checking access every shift, but they were not doing this. So really seeing that, dialysis patients reside at home, in hospitals, in nursing homes, subacutes, congregate livings, things like this, and being able to extend our knowledge base to those areas through programs that integrate with like CNAs and home health aides and phlebotomy techs and physical therapy, stuff like this, is the direction that we're going, so that we can really do our part in closing up the gaps in the continuum of care for ESRD patients.
Awesome. Dee, did that answer your question? I think it did. So I think you've got a lot of things ahead for you. A lot of positive things. So one other question, it's just a fun question. Now, we had a question on our show notes that I'm not going to try to pronounce because I'll end up botching them up. So I'm just going to ask you what your favorite food is.
Okay. So my favorite food, Favorite food. Gosh, I was thinking menudo or pozole, well, based off of the question. So out of those two choices, pozole. But favorite food, gosh, I'm South American. I like Peruvian food, so it would probably be one of our native dish. Maybe I like pollo a la brasa. So if anybody in LA, look that up, pollo a la brasa. Like, you can go to these rotisserie chicken places where they cook over eucalyptus wood chips or whatever, and Peruvian ají salsa and corazon. Like, I don't know if anybody ate anticuchos before, but that's it's beef heart. So a lot of people say, I don't want that one, right? But it's beef heart on skewers, kind of like a barbecue style, really good stuff.
Awesome. Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and end it. It's been wonderful. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day, Mike, to be here with us. I know, and to our audience, Rich and Dwelyn, we were having technical difficulties. It was a lot of fun. We couldn't get my mic to work on that. We got the mic to work, and then I hopped out to do something, hopped back in, couldn't get the mic to work on the stream. And then it was a mess, and then we had to do the other thing. But that's the fun part about live streaming. And I'm the host of the Rich and Dwelyn show today. I feel a little honored to be a host of them. I miss those two guys. Generally, I like to be behind and do all the comments, but it has been fun. But I appreciate your time, Mike. I think we had a wonderful conversation. So we're going to hit the outro video. If you want to stick around for a second or two, you're more than welcome to.
Sure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your time, and y'all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your Sunday.